Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into Joker War, and at this point we've reached the run of the conclusions. And with doing so, we're concluding with the run of Rick Grayson, which was a run that kind of felt all over the place, and mainly because of so many different writers. Like, there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one, you can tell. But when Zach Kaplan came in and did the whole Owls thing, which then had its time restraints with Year of the Villain and Joker War, but if he had been brought in earlier or that idea had started earlier, I feel like the Rick Grayson saga just would have been better, giving that specific part more time to play out. But either way, here we are at the end, and there's quite a bit that ties in even to the tie-ins of this Joker War tie-in. And so let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so prior to this point, we had talked about the Joker going to Bloodhaven and lowering the number of Nightwings running around through the streets. But through the course of this, he had got caught up with the whole Rick Grayson situation, which then led him to follow Rick all the way back to the Prodigal Bar, to where he just waited upstairs until Bia was alone. But in the case of Rick, when he had left, as it turns out, like all the sirens that he had heard, which he had rushed out to respond to, they had been the result of a number of escapees who had made their way out from their cells or their transports from a massive breakout which had originated from a power outage at the prison. And a lot of the prisoners had been accounted for, except for Tusk, who was like the last inmate that the police were trying to bring back in. And Rick's eventually able to take him down, but through the process of doing so, he also finds one of the razor sharp Joker cards in one of the tires of the transport vehicles. And it's pretty much then when he realizes that he has to wrap this up, because this whole thing has just been a distraction. But when Rick gets back to the Prodigal Bar, his first priority of course is to protect Bia. But when he gets there, he can't help but to notice his old Nightwing costume, which previously was worn by Detective Sapienza, but at this point in time is not being worn by Detective Sapienza, because obviously he did. But when Rick gets back, Bia, she does try to catch the Joker off guard, but then that doesn't work out because the Joker, he's pretty much a surgeon with that crowbar. So he uses it to block the bat and knocks Bia down with the other hand. And after that, he then threatens Rick to listen, or else he'll give Bia the patented crowbar massage, which prior to this point is kind of here and there as far as the survival rate from what we've seen. But then it's here where we see the Joker use the identity crystal, which Rick had brought back and left in the attic of the Prodigal Bar, only for the Joker to find easily since he was following Rick after coming back from his attempt to get answers from Dr. Haas. And it's here where the Joker then uses the identity crystal on Rick, but we don't immediately see what he does, but instead we then jump over a couple days over to Bia, who at this point has made her way over to Gotham City in an attempt to reach out to Batman for help. And with the way that this is done, it's like we skipped a lot, but it's all gonna come back, trust me. But with Bia making her own bat symbol, which is pretty perfect by the way, but with her making this symbol, it gets the attention of Barbara, who sees it and arrives as Batgirl. But when she sees that it's Bia, she then changes back to Barbara, because prior to this point, Bia knows Barbara, and because of that, she figures that this way, it'll be a more effective way to help. And it's here where Bia gives Barbara like the filler information from when she had been knocked out all the way up to this point, because when she had opened her eyes, she's seen Rick, and Rick had told her the filler information of pretty much him knocking the Joker out and destroying the crystal. But even still, she had noticed that Rick was acting super weird, like smiling all the time and doing a bunch of little things that Rick wouldn't do. And shortly after this, he had left for Gotham, but that's why Bia had came to Gotham, and with doing so, looking for help from Batman or Batgirl. But also with Bia giving Barbara this explanation, like during this time, we also get some of Rick's involvement throughout the Red Hood Outlaw series, which was what I was referring to earlier as a tie-in to the tie-in. But it's here to where at this point it's still pretty early on in the Joker War, and it's early enough to that point to where the streets of Gotham, they had just started to get out of hand. And at this point with Jason working alone, and mainly because Artemis and Bizarro got sucked into a portal, and also at this time Bruce is nowhere to be found, so Jason's pretty much on his own in Gotham, fixing things the way that Jason Todd fixes things. But at this point when he's spotted, we find out that the Joker's goons, they've been given instructions to inform the Joker the moment that any of them had spotted the Red Hood. But even still with this happening, Jason knew that he was being followed, and because of that, he led them to Ma Gunn's school for wayward boys, which at one point was his old orphanage, and after that, an hideout for the outlaws. But with luring the Joker's goons there, he sets this place to self-destruct so that he can bring in as many of these guys as possible, and then just bring the building down on all of them. And because of that, there's this countdown and like the clock is ticking. But then when he hears this ka-thunk, which is a sound he recognizes from anywhere, and that's because it's the sound of metal hitting flesh and bone. And when he hears it, he then makes it his priority to find out where it's coming from and who it is, only to find that it's Punchline beating the Joker's daughter with a crowbar. And so now here's the thing, because one, Dula Dent, she's not actually the Joker's daughter. But then in addition to that, this right here isn't actually Dula Dent, but instead this was like a homeless person who they had dressed up to look like her, so that Punchline can then orchestrate this mind game with Jason Todd, while then also sending a message through Rick Grayson. But the fact that this was all happening at Ma Gunn's school for wayward boys, like that wasn't something that they had planned, but it was something that they definitely had used to their advantage, because the whole time that Rick was fighting against Jason, and for the most part Rick is delivering this message from the Joker as if he's the Joker himself, and with doing so just taunting Rick with a bit of a reenactment from Death in the Family. But with doing this had actually distracted Jason from the fact that he had set a timer to blow this building to pieces, which at this point then put Jason in a very similar situation to Bruce, to where in this case Jason tried to save Dula Dent, but he had failed. And it was really messed up, but at the same time it was kind of the perfect example to put Jason inside of Bruce's shoes, and who better to make that play out than the Joker. But as a reminder, this wasn't actually Dula Dent, so keep in mind she's still alive out there somewhere. But after this, Jason then gets a distress call from who he believes to be Barbara Gordon, telling Jason that the Joker is at Alfred Pennyworth's Children's Hospital, to where he's rigged the place to explode. And that part we'll get back to in just a little bit. But for now, jumping back to the conversation between Bia and Barbara, at this point Bia has caught up Barbara on everything that she knows concerning Rick, from Dr. Haas to the Court of Owls, the Identity Crystal, and Rick being somewhere in Gotham at this point. And after that, Bia tells Barbara that she'll see what she can do to make sure that Rick gets the help that he needs. And while she's going through Gotham looking for him, she brought one of his Nightwing costumes, and really just in hopes that he'll put it back on and everything will go back to normal. And when she pulls it out of her backpack, she hears someone yell to her left as she's looking for Nightwing, to whom lo and behold it's jolly old Rick. And at this point she's not sure if she's talking to Rick Grayson or Dick Grayson, but she's not really even given enough time to talk to him and figure it out before she's then met with the arrival of Punchline, which for Barbara is like her first time meeting Punchline. And it's like because of that, Punchline has to go through the whole, oh you a fake Harley Quinn and all that stuff. And you can kind of tell even at this point that Punchline is tired of it. And because of that, she even brags to Barbara a little bit, because at this point Punchline still believes that she killed Harley Quinn, because not long before this she had cut Harley's throat and dropped her body in a sewage drain, and she hadn't seen her since. But it's also at this point where Barbara comes to the realization that the Identity Crystal wasn't actually destroyed, but instead the Joker had used it on Rick, turning Rick into his own puppet. And this totally caught Barbara off guard, which then got her knocked out and then taken by Punchline, Rick, and the Joker, so that then she can be a part of the next phase of the Joker playing his games with the Bat family. And really, it's all of these things that connect with what we had seen back in Batman issue 89, like a little while back when everything was ramping up and going into Joker War. Because back then, after the Joker had hired Deathstroke and Punchline had set up Harley and Selina to get attacked in the graveyard, like just after that we had seen that the Joker had plans for members of the Bat family, and all of this is just parts of those plans playing out. From the Joker visiting Barbara again and reenacting the Killing Joke, to setting up Jason Todd and reenacting Death in the Family. But in the case of Richard Grayson, we come to find out that he's actually given Rick new memories which begin from the death of Richard's family, but instead of Bruce taking him in, he gives Richard the narrative of the Joker bringing him in as his own son and raising him under the identity of Dickie Boy. And I feel a couple ways about this, because one, on the surface, like in the grand scope, with the Joker rehashing the different tragedies between Jason, Barbara, and Rick, like in that sense alone, I feel like it was brilliant. But in the case of Richard Grayson, like following him this whole time and going through this with him again, it's like here when it happens, it's just like, oh Rick, here we go again. Because we've seen him go down this road like so many times. And once again, I'll say, like, it wouldn't have been as bad if the only thing that had happened prior to this had been tied to William Cobb and the Court of Owls, but it wasn't, because there's this extra thing with Scarecrow, and then there's Team Nightwing, then there was the whole struggle of Rick starting a life of his own. Like, it was a lot. But if the narrative had started directly with Dr. Haas and William Cobb, then the Joker stealing the Identity Crystal, like, I feel like it just would have had a different impact. And maybe that's just me. Let me know what you guys think either in the comments or Discord. But either way, at this point, the Joker then sets up for Rick to have this one-on-one match with Barbara with her tied to a stake, because that's totally fair. But Barbara then finds a way to get herself out and at least even the playing field in this situation. And it's here where she's fighting Rick, where she also notices that Rick Grayson, with the whole mind situation, to where at this point he has 3 sets of memories warring in his mind, and because of that his fighting skills, though they're still great, they're a bit sluggish. So Barbara tries to use that to her advantage to kind of try and talk him back while also speaking a bit of sense into him. But then also it's here where we see the Joker send Punchline over to Alfred Pennyworth's Children's Hospital, which is the part that ties back into the tie-in to this tie-in, where we had seen the Red Hood get a distress call from who he had thought to be Barbara Gordon. And it's here where we find out that she sent the same call out to Timothy Drake, but as we know it was Punchline and not Barbara Gordon, so that was a lie. But the part about the bomb, like, that was completely true. But in the case of Barbara, while she's fighting Rick, she overhears this from the Joker, and she leaves Rick to head to the hospital because she knows it's a setup, not to mention the bomb situation's pretty real. And when Barbara leaves, Rick starts to go after her, but the Joker's then like, I got something else I want you to do. And for the record, like, the distance between the hospital and the rooftop, they're fairly close, so keep that in mind because there's a bit of back and forth between these 2 locations. But when Barbara gets there, her main concern is the safety of the children at the hospital, and when Rick gets there, he immediately meets up with Jason and Tim. But when he sees them, he tells them that it's Barbara who's been brainwashed by the Joker, which is why she sent them the call, and that they need to help him stop her from blowing up the hospital. And initially they buy into it like they're finna help him, but then Rick quickly turns on the both of them, and when he does, like, I can only imagine that Jason, like, he feels the dumbest right now. Because it takes him a minute, but then Jason's like, wait a minute, you're wearing the same outfit as that dude that attacked me with Punchline at my gun school. And really the only difference then was that Rick was wearing a mask. Like, that's the only thing that was different. The entire outfit's the same. And really it's because of that, like, Jason, he loses a few detective points in my book because he should have put that together stat. But he didn't, so here we are. But at least this time Jason's like, I'm not gonna get distracted and let this bomb go off. So he sends Drake to go inside and defuse the bomb, while he stays outside dealing with Rick. And even in this case, your sluggish, slower Rick, he's still moving quicker than Jason. And as a result, Rick disarms him and takes one of his guns. And I'm sure the argument's gonna be made that Jason didn't want to hurt Rick, so for that reason he was going easy on him, but that wasn't necessarily the case. Because before Tim went inside, he told Jason don't hurt him. But then Jason told Tim, like, if he steps over the line, Jason will be more than happy to meet him there. But then not only did Rick do a double backward roll over the line, but he had then taken Jason's gun in the process. But so now back to the rooftop, children are safe. Barbara then goes back up top to where she gets the drop on Punchline and Joker and takes the memory crystal. And from there she immediately takes it to Rick because, you know, he about to shoot Jason in the face. But with trying to get the drop on Rick, he kicks her away and she drops the memory crystal. And this is all happening while Tim's down in the basement trying not to die. But for Barbara and Jason, Rick still has the upper hand because he has the gun and he now has the 2 of them at gunpoint. But at this point in time, no one is in possession of the memory crystal. And even though the Joker is screaming from a distance for Rick to shoot, it's not like he still has the memory crystal to make Rick do anything. And arguably with Barbara being closer to the crystal and once again trying to pull Rick back in, like if either of them had the chance of getting through, the chances are much stronger for Barbara, being that she's closer to the crystal in this moment. But it's here with them both yelling at him in 2 different directions, which then causes the barriers that Dr. Haas had built to keep Rick's memory suppressed as his life as Dick Grayson and separate from his life as Rick Grayson. It's like it's here when those barriers start to break down, and it causes Rick to remember his life both as Rick Grayson and as Dick Grayson, but this time without any influence pulling him either way. And when he comes back to, we find out at this point that Bia has made her way over there, and mainly from chasing all the commotion and trying to find Rick and making her way on foot from like one spot to the next. But when she gets here and she asks Rick if he's okay, he just tells her not Rick, Dick. And from there it's like, finally, Dick Grayson's back. And I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to the Nightwing series from here forward, with it actually having Nightwing in it. But right after this happens, Batman then shows up, and I want to say this is around the time in Joker War after he had that dream of Alfred and pulled together the idea of how much he needs the Bat family, because I think that's the place where it kind of makes most sense, because after this they'll then rally to get more members of the Bat family to join in and help Bruce out. Plus it also helps that Dick has a fresh Nightwing costume sitting on that rooftop nearby, which he can change into moving forward. But it's also here we get a couple things, cause Dick also confirms that he's actually back when he tells Batman a little inside joke that it occurred just before he was shot by KG Beast. But after that, Dick then mentions that he thought Bruce forgot about him with everything that had been going on over in Bloodhaven, where Bruce lets him know like back then there were a number of times that he came to check on him over in Bloodhaven just to make sure that he was okay. But as for the return of Dick Grayson, the return of the true Nightwing, that pretty much wraps it up. But there's one little loose string. Because when Dick gets his memories back and Bia sees him return back to the Bat family, and not to mention Batgirl's extra affection for Nightwing, she then walks away sad that she lost her Rick, but then also with a bit of resentment, mentioning that she will always hate Gotham. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can head to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys, and I gotta say, man, it feels good just to have Nightwing back, like just Nightwing being Nightwing. And just from the previews of the Nightwing series moving forward, it very much seems like he's gonna have to go up against KG Beast, to whom we know is still alive, which we talked about in the Batgirl Joker War tie-in, with KG Beast reappearing recently in issues of Batwoman, which then tied into Batgirl. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.